So our first, let me get back to my window again. Share my screen. Okay. So some quick WordPress news and events. It's a little light around this time of year. For folks who didn't have a chance to attend, WordCamp US was really the biggie since we last met. That was October 1st. Our own Peter Ingersoll was part of the presenters there. Very proud moment for Hartford WordPress group there, and great presentation. And you can watch the replays online, so they're still available. They do link to a YouTube channel, which I'm not sure if you can find them directly on YouTube or not, but if you go to the website, it's still up. You know, it's WordCamp or us.wordcamp.org. And there'll be two different tracks. You can do the Yukon track or the Columbia track. It lists all the schedules and presenters. You can still click on each one of them and watch the recording. So take advantage of that. I think there's a lot of great content there. So that's one in the past. One that's happening right now, don't drop and go to it, because you can also watch recordings of it, is the Page Builder Summit. And we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Sue was attending it, and Sue said she thought maybe she saw you at one of the sessions. So I'm not sure if you were on one of them today or not.
Oh yeah, I was. Yeah, sure was. I'm everywhere.
Do you want to talk about this one a little bit? I attended a little bit of it last year, but do you mind giving a minute or two what the summit's
Yeah,
about?
no, this is a great one. It actually goes it goes all week. There's a lot of topics, and because it's meant to cover, for the most part, a focus on page builders themselves. There's a lot of there's specific topics on the Gutenberg block editor, Oxygen is a page builder, Beaver Builder, Elementor, but there's also a lot of things that are, while tied to that, are still based on, you know, running a business on WordPress. So it really is a very comprehensive summit. It's free. There is, when you sign, if you were to go and you sign up, you get an option to buy the Power Pack, which gives you the ability to get everything recorded for a long time and things like that. But it's one of those where you can look at a schedule and say, oh, I'm interested in that one, and that one. They're pre-recorded, although the chats are live. And then so you can time shift. It was something you still sign up, you could still see it at a different time if you can't make it at that time. So they're not you know, absolute live. It only happens at a certain time. It's a pre-recorded thing with some live chat, but and some run by some great people. Nathan Wrigley, who is WP Builds in the UK, is kind of the primary person. He's got a partner that works on it, and they just do a really good job. And they've got a lot of really people that I've known for a while online and like a lot. So I'm a big fan.
It's quality. I was thinking, I attended a bit or some of the sessions last year, and it's especially for free. And that's a thing. But this one's a limited time one too, so I would highly recommend, even if you're going to see a couple of them, just go and sign up. It's a free ticket, and yeah, you can watch the recordings of the past sessions. So that one's pagebuildersummit.com, and it's happening right now for the next couple of days.
Yep.
And then for a tool and plugin spotlight, we put Sue on the hook, because Peter and I are sick of giving our favorite plugins. We're looking for help.
Yeah.
Sue, what do you have to share with us?
I'll do my things here. Okay. We have I work with an agency. So we've got a package of plugins that we use, and it just really depends on what kind of site it is. A lot of the sites we build are brochure sites. A lot of the sites are, we don't get too heavy duty into e-commerce usually. But one of the things I've been trying to do is get pages to load faster, which is that thing that we all want. And one of the ways to do that, and I think you might, I don't remember which meetup it was, but I think you might have talked about WebP image compression, making pictures smaller. And WebP is a format that's invented by or built by Google. And it really does make pages load faster. Unless you have really sophisticated tools, you can't create your own WebP images. And you have a little trouble uploading them to your website. WordPress has a little issue with that, like with SVGs, then you need another plugin. So I was looking for something that would manage it. The plugin that we use, that it's kind of new, and now it's got almost 1 million installs, and it's spelled EWWW Image Optimizer. Now you can say you, but I talked to the guy who wrote it and he says you. So I go with you.
Mhm.
And the thing about this that's cool, especially if you put it on a new site, it works on existing sites, but on the free version, you just set your little preferences and it will easily convert every picture you put up there to a WebP and serve that to any browser that accepts it. And most browsers do now. And you can, if you're gutsy, delete your original pictures, or you can just leave them there. But on a brand new site, combined with a media folder manager that I like that puts your pictures into folders, it doesn't change the link. You can drag them around wherever you want. But if you put both, at least you on the site, then you will be, while you're sleeping, making WebP images. It has absolutely reduced file sizes, especially if you use big background images, hero images, anything like that. And I run the Lighthouse tool from Google, and you have to do it a couple of different times on the same site. You got to do it from maybe a different browser or an incognito window. And I look at the same page before and after, and I'm seeing a couple of percentage points, especially on big images. So that sold me, especially because it's free. So that's ours. And if you want to, I can put the link into the chat.
I think I found it. I put it in there. So yeah,
Oh,
I've
okay.
heard
I
of
don't
it.
have, I didn't have my chat open.
Yeah,
Yeah, there it is.
I think, yeah, I put it in there.
And because it went to 1 million installs really quickly, I figured, okay, nobody's complaining about it. It's good. It didn't get banned or blacklisted or whatever. So that's mine for tonight.
That's a good one, yeah.
Along with, and if you deal with sites where the site owner takes 25 pictures from a meeting right off their phone and uploads them to the website, then you can tell this plugin, any picture that goes up there cannot be wider than, and you can tell it 1500 pixels, whatever, because if you just slap up, my nonprofits do this. They have a luncheon, they take pictures of all the tables, they throw them right on the website. All of a sudden you got 30 or 40 megabytes of pictures up there. So when you, and then the site's slow. So then this thing does it automatically when you upload the picture. And I put there's a question in chat. There's not a limit to the number of pictures. There is a limit per day if you're trying to optimize already existing pictures on the site. And they want you to, buy their tools for that. But there's no limit. I have a ridiculous site with 6,000 to 7,000 pictures. It's a combination of a multi-site into a single site. We put it on there and knocked several 2 or 3 gigabytes off file sizes. So anyway, it's our favorite, and my second favorite would be one of 3 different media folder manager. You can make folders.
Save that one. Save that for next time. I want Judith Ann to come back for that one because she has.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm done.
I think we have a new co-presenter, so that's great. Great job.
I am sitting at a card table in the kitchen with the porch behind. We're redoing my office, a gift I bought myself. Card table in the kitchen. So before you start talking about co-presenters, I need to get a little geekier first.
No, the one that I've heard of it for compression. I use what's the other one?
Smush.
Smush,
Short
Smush
pixel.
Short pixel.
Yeah,
I
Smush
purchased
doesn't-
a lifetime thing for short pixel.
Smush doesn't do WebP.
Yeah.
People are moving away from Smush, I hear. Short pixel, I think you have to be a little smarter than average to be working with short
I
pixel.
think short pixel, you need the paid version more than the
That's-
free one. Free one's
yes.
not
Yeah,
But
short. The thing with short pixel is that they're now charging. They charge on a credit basis, and the WebP is a credit, and they was part of it. Now it's a separate thing, but yeah.
That's
Yeah,
a great-
so this for new people, for people that aren't geek, serious geeks, this one really is very handy.
No, it's a great one. And I think at some point too, that kind of reminds me is, Peter, is we're building out this site. One of the things we talked about, but just reminding myself too, is once we're getting done with this animal shelter site, we're going to do the optimizations on it too.
Yeah.
So that's a great one.
Oh,
We'll start
cool.
throwing in some of these things so people can
Yeah.
see us try to do that. So thank you.
Then you're
Steve.
going to do SEO, right?
Oh, yeah.
Not for a fake site, no. We'll do a little bit of SEO stuff though.
No, we'll do it.
That's great. Thank you.
We'll do it.
All right, let me share the main. Let me bring up the main presentation. Sorry. Wonderful. See if anyone else has tools. Just like see, it's painless to present here. That's all you got to do. All right, give me 1 second. Share my screen again. Desktop. Okay. Can everyone see that? Okay. And I hope folks don't mind. I keep it in this edit mode. It's easier to flip through slides than do full screen. So let's jump into our main topic, which is creating contact forms in WordPress. And this was when at first I said, is there going to be enough meat to talk about this for a whole meeting? And I think we'll be lucky if we cover 90% of what we want to try to talk about. So yes, there's a lot here, and there's a lot we're not going to talk about too. So real quick, we'll do some speaker introductions if you haven't met Peter or myself. We'll do another quick recap of our project. If you're joining us for the first time, we're kind of building out a project. We'll tell you about what that's all about. We had some leftovers too. This was for folks who joined us last month. There was a lot to that topic as well, the custom post type. So there was a little bit that we covered kind of quickly. So Peter's going to go back and just cover that before we get into our contact pages. And then we'll just do a quick overview of, kind of best practices, some ideas around contact forms and contact pages. And then the rest of it's gonna be demos. Really, we're gonna try to get into a lot of hands-on stuff. So you see us coding and fumbling along and explaining what we're doing. So we're gonna build a contact page template. I'm gonna do that. Peter's gonna create a simple contact form. We'll create a slightly more complex one. I'll spend a few minutes on that. And then we're going to link these pieces together into different spots on our site. And then we'll have plenty of time at the end for wrapping things up and Q&A. So let's get to it. So I'm Ray. I'm one of the co-organizers of this Hartford WordPress meetup group. I've been in IT in various forms and for the past 25 plus years, primarily as a developer / architect for some Fortune, 10 companies, I guess these are now, or 50 or whatever. I've been using WordPress probably close to 5 years now, at least full time. I should say prior to that, I dabbled with WordPress for quite a bit. Self-employed, and I'm a website developer for businesses and nonprofits. I live in Newington, Connecticut, married, no kids, one crazy old cat, and I'm a geek. Peter.
I'm Peter Ingersoll. I live in South Windsor, Connecticut. I've been doing communication and using technology for communication and marketing for a good number of decades, about 35 years now. Keeps adding up. I build and maintain WordPress websites for a number of clients. I worked at the Current, if you're from Connecticut, so the Hartford Current. I was there for a long time, worked for logistics companies. I'm self-taught in a lot of things, and I'm married with 2 adult children and 2 young cats. And yes, cats are crazy.
Very true. All right, so folks who are joining us maybe for the first time, or if you haven't been following along entirely, tonight's session flows into kind of previous ones, but you don't have to attend to those. But just to kind of give you a recap of what we've been doing over the course of several meetups, probably we're working on like 4 of them, 4 or 5 at this point. Our goal was to really try to give some context to a lot of these subjects that we've been discussing in meetups, and Peter and I thought a great way to do that is to build something, build a project, and I think it helps put things into context. So we wanted to build something moderately complex. We're not building something crazy like a big e-commerce site or some custom application, but a fairly moderately complex average website. We want to try to use free plugins as much as possible. And in fact, I think so far we've stuck to that. I don't think there's a single paid plugin on what we've built. And we try to build upon prior ones, but again, except for the first couple where we're building kind of the bones of this, you can probably even jump around a bit too if you're watching these on YouTube. We're trying to show best practices versus just doing some quick and dirty solutions. There may be times where we have to make a little bit of a compromise. We'll try to explain why in those cases, and again, hopefully refactor things later when we can. And again, we're doing this hands-on, so we do hope that if you're following along afterwards, try to replicate what we do, or at least parts of it. You're going to learn a lot, I think, just trying to do the things that we're doing. Just listening to somebody do something isn't really the best way to learn. And if you go back to our earlier sessions too, even if you don't have hosting or you don't want to mess around with your current hosting, you can build this locally. So go back to our part 1 where we talk about how to set up an environment to do that. So our project is we're building a fictional animal rescue site for a fictional nonprofit. And again, if you think about what an animal rescue would need to do, kind of the big goals of that site would be, education, donations, facilitating pet adoptions, and recruiting volunteers. So today we'll talk a little bit about the volunteers part of it. And again, even though we're talking about an animal rescue, which you may not be involved in necessarily, everything that we're doing here should be applicable to whatever type of website you're building or supporting. So here was our inspiration. This was from another company, this Duda company there, and we'll look at this a little bit later too as we look at kind of the layout that we're going to be building tonight. And again, if you go back to, I think it was part 1, we talked about looking for inspiration. So there was nothing special about the site. In fact, I think when we're done with it, ours is going to look a little bit different than it, but it was a starting point. And I think a lot of people get frozen with that blank page, when you're building anything. So we wanted a place to begin with. So what we've built so far, and in fact, I'll show you, it's actually more impressive than this. It's looking pretty nice, I think, for something we've built over the course of a couple of meetups. This is what it's starting to look like right now. So we've already built a header. Again, some of these links don't really belong anywhere. We're going to start building out this contact page tonight. We built this hero section. We built a couple sections here, et cetera, et cetera. So, oops, that's the Duda one. I'm sorry, that's not ours. Ours is this. Ours is better. Ours is a dog, because ours is actually pets. Yep. So yes, we built a logo. We built all of this, but it looks similar. So maybe that was because, let me go back to this for a second. Sorry. So if you looked at, this was our inspiration. This was our layout for nonprofit. And again, we've built it, it's kind of similar up to a point. And then last month, where we really deviated was we threw in a section that was specific to us. This is the custom post types section. So we've added this to our homepage, and each one of these, if you click on them, brings you, I'll click on it right now, it brings you to a page for that pet. So that's where we are. And actually, this is probably a good segue of, so there was a lot to that session last time, and I hope folks do go back and watch it and follow it. But one of the pieces that Peter wanted to have a little bit more time on was showing you that reusable block. So let me stop sharing. And Peter, if you want to, it's all yours. Show all right. More of that.
Let me move some screens around here. And let me share. I'm going to share this screen here. Okay. Can you see a WordPress screen right now? Okay, great. So yeah, we were looking at last time was how to add a custom post type, so, and we called it pet. So instead of a normal post that comes built into WordPress, we created our own, and it's called the post type is called pets, and we added some custom fields by using a tool called ACF Advanced Custom Fields. So we created a field group, and in that field group, we had a number of new fields we added, breed, age, color, size, if you recall. The whole point of this was to make data entry for pets for this website easy for people to add new pets, manage the pets that they have on their site. Now, one of the things that we would normally do when we build the site out like this and we have a custom post type is we would have a post, a specific custom post type template. And we kind of worked around that based on the fact that so many of the things, one, either use a premium tool, which is a paid tool, or get into a level of coding that we just didn't want to get into for the tool that for what we were doing. So we thought what really kind of worked nicely was and a nice compromise, at least for this stage in our development of this site, is to create a reusable block. So reusable block, relatively new to WordPress, which is a block that can be used on different pages. It's the same. A reusable block is a block that you could put on a page, and whatever's in there and wherever it shows, that'll be consistent across all of those pages. So while it would create a step of adding this reusable block, what the nice part is we could create something where you would be able to design it in such a way. And for our demo last week, we quickly went through and created this reusable block using a container block, a little title up here, and then using a table, we placed the advanced custom field shortcode. So in the square brackets, this is a traditional historic WordPress way of taking code and putting it in a little package. It's called a shortcode. In more advanced ways, we might use something like a dynamic field here that's calling to the database and all. But again, that gets into some of the premium tools that we just decided not to deal with. So when I walk through this, what we did was we placed these fields that are using the advanced custom field shortcode so that we could use these variables, but use them consistent across our various pets. So when we went to view the pet, that data was pulled in from the fields that we had added using the advanced custom fields that when you go to edit, you have your breed, your age, the things that I mentioned before. But one of the things that I would have done with this and would like to do is just, if I were to add something here in this same reusable block, I might put a button, and we're going to use this today. And I could just use a button, and I would say, I'll center it, and I will say, learn more about this pet. Now, we could also get into things like variables where we would say learn more about and then use the name of the pet. But we don't need to get to that point now. I think what we'll do is we'll use that as more of a, when we go back and say, gee, how can we make the user interface even better? But now what I wanted to say, a good way of dealing with reusable blocks is to to group them. So say I had a title up here. I'm going to put a quick heading, and I'll just say more about this pet, but say it was outside of this container block. I can remove that. And I wanted to change the styling here. One of the things to do that you can do is if you highlight a number of blocks, you can then go to the three dots that you often see and group these. So now these all become one big group, and then that group can then be added to the reusable blocks. And we can give this, I don't want to use the same name, but details of pet. I think I said pet details before when I save that. So now that reusable block, if I were to go to, I'm going to update this. Now, if I go to another pet, and interesting enough, when we did our demo, we used the previous reusable block. I am going to, and by the way, if you notice, that one when I had changed, this now becomes universal. I'm going to remove this block and I'm going to add, it's easier to do it from the inserter here because you can see where your reusable blocks are. But before we call it pet detail, now we have this group block called details of pet. And I'm going to now add that right here. Update and save this. Oh, guess I didn't remove the other one completely. Add reusable details of pet. That's a new one. Block cannot be rendered inside of it. So
I was hoping you had an answer for that one.
yeah,
try saving it. See if it still looks.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
Rendered inside of itself.
And no, it doesn't work.
Mm.
Well,
It must be something about the way it was grouped.
yeah, exactly. I must have grouped I must have grouped the, well, let's do this. I'm going to do this very, very quickly.
Was the issue, let me just throw this out there, Peter, was the issue that you had already had a reusable block and then you were creating another one with it, that you were kind of like building on top of it?
You are 100% correct.
I think if you started from scratch.
You are 100% correct.
Yeah.
What I meant to do is I meant to come back here, go here.
I like to tell you, I like your mistakes because I made the same exact.
Did you? Perfect.
You're
I
at
said here's-
the right meetup. If you
I like it.
This was intentional.
I like it.
Yeah, so let me do this. So one of the first things I'm going to do, and that is, there is I'm going to add a plugin to us, okay? And this is a great, if you use reusable blocks, I'm glad we gave ourselves a few minutes to do this. Under plugins, I'm going to add a new one, and it's called Reusable Blocks Extended. I'm going to install that. I'm going to activate it. And when you do that, now in your menu choice here, on your admin menu, we have a new menu choice called blocks. And you can go in and manage your reusable blocks separate from any plugin. It's a great tool. It's called and what you can also do is you can convert them to block patterns, which is a whole different thing. So if you create something, like a lot of times you're going to save that as a reusable block, and now you say, I want to use it as a block pattern, which is something you can insert, and then the content can then be edited separate from other pages, which is one of the things that if you forget, that happens with reusable blocks. A change in one is universal to wherever else.
Peter, is that block menu item new?
That block, this item here,
Yeah.
is a function of the
plugin.
quickly installed reusable blocks extended.
Oh,
plugin.
okay.
Yeah. So this,
Wow.
if I deactivate this plugin, that menu choice goes away. If I activate reusable blocks extended, a great plugin, I now have this new block. And I mean, this new menu choice, and now I can go in and I can edit. And I don't know if I can recover this. So here's what I'll do. I'll save myself a little headache, and I will go back to.
Do you have a revision?
I don't know if a custom block, a reusable block is a custom post type, actually, not to get too overly complicated. I don't know if the revision is here. Let's see. Of course, I created this one brand new, so it wouldn't have a revision. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the pet detail one.
That's the one.
That was the first one I created. That should work.
Ooh.
While Ray is presenting, I'm going to come back to this.
You
This
break
is, yes,
you break our
things
site,
happen.
Peter.
Things happen. So I wonder if in here, I can
Just
go
so
to,
I want to make sure folks are following, because this is good. I think just so
Yeah.
folks can understand I think what happened, and again, this goes back to, one of the reasons we say do some of these things also not on your live site.
Yeah.
We're having a test area is it looks like the issue is Peter was creating a new reusable block or grouping something
Right.
together, and it just happened to be using a previously existent one. So I wonder if the Gutenberg block editor is saying that you can't have like these nested ones in each other.
it's literally referencing itself.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am going to, before the end, I'm not going to spend more time on this now.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to this and I'll let you know what we've done.
I like it. Thank you.
Yes, by the way, for anyone who's made a mistake and can't figure out what happened, it happens.
We make them too.
Yep.
There's always a way to recover.
I can't believe I demonstrated exactly what we just said before. All right, where are we?
Let me tell you, let me grab the screen then. I'll
You got it?
recover us back.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. Well, but I think, like I said, I think that's a good, obviously that was a good thing for people to see too. And some of the stuff, I mean, even that plugin you showed, I thought was really neat. I wrote it down, the Reusable Blocks Extended. But to me, it almost shows like how even Gutenberg and block editor is still in its infancy, because to me, that should be a core feature of Gutenberg. I mean, we talked a little bit about page builders as a little side tangent, but one of the reasons I still keep going back to like Divi is my page builder is it has all its stuff already figured out, all the things of libraries, and it's just so much easier to set things. So it's, right now we're still in the beginnings of the block editor. So let's go to, again, our main topic tonight, which is the contact forms and contact pages. So just a little bit of context. I think everyone's familiar with this. If you've created a website before, or if you've used a website, obviously you probably run into a contact page. So these are kind of obvious and won't belabor them, but why would you even want a contact page? Well, assuming that your website or blog that you want to have some communication with visitors, you probably want a contact page. So, your visitors could be customers, clients, donors, etc. You want to have some sort of way for them to communicate with you. That's obviously what the purpose of a contact page is. And, from a visitor's standpoint, there's probably some basic information about your business or your organization that people want. So you want to group it together into like an easy to find place, things like hours of operation, phone numbers, etc. I mean, I have visited sites, I'm sure you have as well, like a store or something. You're like, I just want to know when they're open. Like, tell me the basics. Where's your phone number and email? So putting that all in one place is good for your visitors and for you. And the other thing too is providing multiple options for how people can communicate with you. Again, some people want to pick up a phone, some people want to send an email, etc. So we're going to talk about contact forms, but just think about the contact page itself, just a little bit broader, give people some different choices. So again, what would you put on a contact page? The basics of phone numbers, emails, physical address or addresses if you have multiple locations, hours of operation if you're a business, things like your social media icons. And again, these don't only have to be on a contact page. In fact, a lot of times you want to be redundant. This is a good example. Some of these things you want in your header or footer, but find some people just want to jump to the contact page. So it's okay to put things in multiple locations. A location map is something, again, so people don't have to go off somewhere else and search for your location. And then the contact form, which is what we're going to be building tonight. So again, so why have a contact form itself? We talked about people can send you emails. So what's the benefit of having a form? Well, a form lets you control kind of what information you require. And again, when you think about this, at least I always tell, especially clients of mine where I'm building sites for them, I say, just gather the minimum necessary information in order to complete whatever your goal is. Like for example, you can ask them 50 different things, like, oh, what about this or that? But people get frustrated with a long, complicated form. So, if you're a business, for example, you quickly want to talk to the customer and take care of them or set up an appointment or whatever. Don't make them go through a bunch of hoops first before before they can submit that form. So again, think about the goal, but also think about what's the minimum necessary information you need at that point in time. Don't overload them. But by having a form instead of just an email, it really does let you control some things like data integrity. So you can validate the data like phone numbers, numeric fields, etc. Instead of just getting stuff all kind of munched together. And by doing that, by having validated data, then we probably won't have a lot of time to show this tonight, but you can start doing things with the data. You can start integrating that data with other systems and processes. Most people think about, oh, a contact form just means I can email this information to myself. Well, there's a lot more you can do with that data than just email. You can push it to another system. You can sign them up to your mailing list. You can, through other tools, like integration tools like Zapier, et cetera, you can save things to Google Forms, et cetera. So it's, sky's the limit really with what you can do with the data. And you can also apply spam protection too. So again, we're not going to get super deep into spam tonight because that's a whole separate topic. But by having a form, at least you can put some controls in place as opposed to just people calling you or sending an email where you can't really, it's outside of your hands. With the form itself, at least you can put some controls to prevent that. So when we talk about contact form plugins, and Peter, you may go into this more later, just when we talk about different features, but just some common features you want to look at if you're comparing contact forms. So, what makes a good contact form? Especially these days, I think easy to build and style your forms, in the plugin. We'll talk a little bit about some of the older contact forms that have been around for a long time, and some of them are powerful and they have, they meet these other criteria, but the easy to build and style, some of them kind of fail that. So, in a world where people want to build things, visually, you want to build it and see what you're building. In my mind, I think that's a high priority feature, being able to style and build within the form itself. You also want to make sure that your plugin provides commonly used input fields. So, phone number or email, things like that, as opposed to just a text field for input, and then you have to do data validation on it. You also want to make sure that the data is saved on the back end of a website. So what I mean by that is like I use Divi as a page builder on some of my projects. Divi has a contact form module. Don't use it. If you're using Divi, don't use it. And one of the reasons is because it doesn't actually save the data on the back end of the site. So what I mean by that is it'll take the contact form data and send it to you through email. But what if something fails? What if there's an error? What if you want to go back later and see all the entries that were submitted on a form? If you're just using a module that doesn't have persistence on the back end, you can't see any of that. So that's where a plugin really helps. Integration with other tools, again, depending on what you want to do with the data, that could be a factor for which plugin you choose. Some tools, integrate much better than others, or if you want to integrate with a particular payment gateway, things like that, that may dictate which plugin you use. And also, just like any plugin, this isn't just for contact forms. We always say make sure that your plugin has a strong user and customer support base. Make sure that it's updated frequently. Make sure that it's look at it on the WordPress repository, make sure that it actually has a decent active customer base. And then again, if you start getting more specialized, that may limit or dictate what kind of plugin you want. If there's some very specific feature you need, like there's some that do questionnaires better, or just plug into different backends better. That may also require a paid version. So what we're going to try to do tonight is move with a free version, but as you get more advanced, that's where a lot of these, the freemium model comes into play. They give you a lot for free, and the one we're going to build with tonight, you actually get quite a bit. But once you get beyond that, you're probably going to have to pay for something. Peter, any other features you can think of that I didn't cover in terms of like really critical ones for evaluating a contact form plugin?
No, a big part of it, like anything with WordPress, is that there's a lot of things that are dependent on what you need to do, and then you measure out where those features are. But I think you covered the basics. As we get into things, it's like, oh, this is what we need, and we'll look at the details of that.
And here's just some of them. This isn't an exhaustive list, but some of the ones you've probably seen if you're working on a site, or if you've done a quick Google search on contact form, best contact form plugins. Some of them have been around for quite a while. This is actually Gravity Forms in the middle. Gravity Forms is probably one of the older ones, all the Caldera and Contact Form 7, et cetera. They've been around for a while. Gravity Forms is a very good, powerful plugin. I've gone away from it over the years just because I've found that in terms of, back to what I said, of ease of use and styling, I've never found it very easy to use or style. I mean, you can style it. I mean, you can style anything with CSS and some knowledge, but I've just found I spent more time outside of Gravity Forms than actually, building forms in it. So some of the newer ones, some of the new kids on the block, Ninja Forms is one that's been around the past couple of years. And the one we're going to use for our project tonight is Fluent Forms. So Peter, I think you also have a lifetime paid license for this as well, right?
I do, yeah.
And that's the thing, everything we're going to do tonight, you're not going to need the paid version. We'll do all with the free version of this. But as you dive a little bit deeper, again, Sue was talking a little bit earlier before people joined about, it's not bad to pay for a plugin, especially one that saves you time. So as you look at some of the advanced features, again, we're not selling Fluent Forms. We're showing all the free features. But if you find something that you're like, boy, that would save me a heck of a lot of time as opposed to me doing it manually, that's where I personally have no problem paying for a plugin. So Fluent Forms is the one we'll be talking about. But again, I think everything we're showing, for the most part, you can probably replicate with some of these other plugins. But obviously, the steps will be a little bit different.
Yeah, just real quick, when you're talking about the features to look at, the premium, when you get into those integrations and there's even, take payments through forms and connect to learning management systems and on and on and on. So those go into very advanced topics, and that's where those integrations are really one of the things that sets the premium tools apart.
Yeah, exactly. And customer support too, that's a thing too.
Yeah, huge.
Free one, you get what you pay for. You go to forums, but once you actually pay for something, then you do have the ability to submit help tickets, et cetera, and get updates. All right, so where we're going to start is, before we dive into the form, let's give it some context. Let's go back to the contact page itself. So this is going to be my introductory piece of, if we go back to our demo site. So as I said, this is our inspiration site. This site is for a nonprofit as well, and for lack of any better inspiration, we're going to use this as kind of, like I said, our template for what we're going to build for our contact page. So if you look at the pieces of this, just to take a minute here, we're going to start off by building a top section here, which has a location. So this is a map location, and then here we're going to have one section on the side, one row. If you think about this, I'm sorry, one column. If you think about this as like a big row, so one column here with some text, some phone number, email, etc., and some social icons. And then this piece, the piece in the middle here, this is going to be the contact form that Peter is going to build out. Just a simple contact form, just to kind of get us started on something. So let's dive in. Let's build this thing. So let me go to our sites. Oh, I got to sign in first. I forgot I even signed in. Again, folks, I think we send this out every time, and we certainly do after these meetups. But you can watch the site being built, as we go, and we're building on. So it's builds.hartfordwp.com, and that's where you can see the latest version of the site. So on our site, as I said, we don't have a contact page yet. So we're gonna, just to show you, there we go. There's no contact page. We're gonna build one here. And again, just catching folks up, if you're here for the first time, we're using Cadence as our theme. It's the free WordPress theme, plays very well with Gutenberg and WordPress blocks. So let's give our page a title. We can say contact. And Cadence also has, and we've installed it too, Cadence has a set of blocks. So we have the Cadence blocks also free installed. So the theme part doesn't really come with much of anything. The blocks, there's the WordPress Gutenberg blocks, but Cadence has some decent blocks with it too. So one that we're going to use now is the row. So, and we talked about this a couple times before, but at least when you're visualizing a page, think about it in terms of sections. That top section we're going to build first is the map. So that map on top. So I'm just going to start with a blank 1-column row. And in here, maps are funny. So I thought maybe this is a good time to talk a little bit about maps. If you've used Page Builder, sometimes a Page Builder has a map module. And a lot of the map modules, the way they work is they're calling Google Maps, the Google Maps API. And in the past, a couple of years ago, Google Maps API was probably the way most people, I would say, built maps, or what they used for maps. Well, Google Maps changed their support model a couple of years ago, I'd say, where now in order to use Google Maps API, you've got to set up an account, you got to put a credit card in and do all this kind of stuff, which freaks people out. Like, why am I, why do you want my credit card? Well, Google Maps, because Google's a business, if you hit a certain number of transactions or API calls, they're going to start charging you. So they give you a free credit every month of something pretty high, like 2,000, 8,000, I forget what it is. Most average websites probably won't go beyond that. So I have personally steered away from using the Google Maps API when I want to create a map. So for something like this, again, just context, we're going to just put a picture up here of a map. Doesn't need to be super complex. We don't need to use the Google Maps API. What we'll do instead is I had a Google window up here. I need an address just basically to put something in there because we're fictional, so we don't have a real address. But I did a search for Connecticut Humane Society. So this would be your organization or your business. Search for yourself first on Google, and then you can go to Google Maps here. And what we want to do is we want to get this information for this map. So what you can do is in Google you can go to Share. And we want to embed a map. So if I go to embed a map, and what this is called an iframe. So what an iframe is, it's almost like it's a way for you to put content from another site or page into your site or page. So when this page loads, this part of it actually goes off to Google and it pulls the map for you, and then your page is also loading. So the nice thing about that, though, is that the data is always going to be current because Google is keeping it current. So if any pins change, etc., you don't have to worry about that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to copy the HTML here. So now I've got this in my clipboard. Let's go back to our page. So what do I do with that? I've got the HTML. Well, I want to add a module in here. And what module would I use? I'm going to use let's look at our modules. Yeah, I think it's going to be custom HTML. Yeah, so this is a Gutenberg blocks. We're not even using a Cadence blocks in this case. We're going to use custom HTML block, and I'm going to paste it in here. Okay, and so at this point, let's just save it. Let's see what this looks like. Why not? So here's what our page looks like. Okay, sort of, not really what I want. So what's wrong here? Let's start fixing this. So what's wrong here is it's squished, right? There's too much space. It's squished, and there's all this stuff on the side. So let's fix the stuff on the side part first. So what's happening here, and I think we did this on a couple of our other pages in the past, was our page layout, and this we set at the theme level. Our page layout is boxed. So we have borders on the side, but in this case, I don't want borders. I want this thing to be a full screen. So first thing I'm going to do is let's go back into edit. Let's play around with the page settings real quick. So if I go to page settings, and even the header, I don't know if do I even want it to say contact? Probably not, because it's going to say contact there anyway. So let's disable the page title. I'm sorry, the page title here. Let's get rid of that. And let's make this full width. I think I would do that. Make that full width. And then content style, let's make this unboxed. And so let's preview that, see how does that look. Did that make a difference? This is still too small. And the reason this is too small because this is within a row. So now we fixed the page problem a bit because this contact is larger, but now let's fix this row. So if I go to the row section, and up here, this is something that kind of is easy to miss too, but if you go to the row alignment, it's aligning at center, but I want this actually to be full width. Now, what does that look like? Getting better, kind of, but so the next problem is this thing. So by default, when I copied that iframe over from Google, it copied over some settings. It copied over a width and a height setting. So as you can see in here, it's saying width is 600 and height is 450. I want this thing to be full screen. So let's change the width to, I'll do like 1920. And then let's change the height to 300, something like that. And let me update this again. And we'll take a look at our page one more time. So how's that looking? A lot better. In fact, good enough. So what I did, it was a combination of two things. One was the map getting pulled back from Google had a hard-coded, iframe width and height. That was conflicting with what I wanted to do, which is make this thing full width. And as you can see now, it's full width, it moves around, et cetera, et cetera. It gets up to 1920 pixels, which is good enough. So again, there's a map, it's embedded in here. It's just HTML. It gets loaded from Google. There's no special widget or anything or block that we use to do that. It just copied over. Now let's build our second part. So now we're going to build this section here, and actually I'll leave room for the contact form, but that'll be Peter's part.
Mm-hmm.
So let me start. I'm just I'm lazy. I don't like typing too much. Let's go back and edit our page. And again, when you think about, we talked about this a little bit before from a design perspective, when you're thinking about a site, I tend to think about it in terms of rows and sections. So our first section, conceptually, was the map. Now we want this other piece below it. So we could, in theory, just add another row and keep embedding things and all that. But just from a design perspective, it'll make your life easier to move things around later, to think of rows and columns. So we're going to add another row at the end of this. So if I go here, we're going to add a block. And this is the Cadence block that we're using. We're going to use the Cadence row block. But this time, instead of doing a single column, we're going to make it look like this. So this isn't quite a 50-50. It's not evenly split like we've done before. I'd say this is probably more 1/3, 2/3-ish. So if I look at the layouts it's showing, it probably looks closer to that. So yeah, this is 33-66, 33%, 66%. So that's good. So now we have two different sections in here, two columns, basically. That's what these really are. And we're going to start off by adding the word contact, and that's going to be a header. I'm going to use, Gutenberg comes with a heading block, but I actually want to use the advanced heading block just from a styling perspective. So we're going to call this, I'm going to paste the word contact in there. And it's fine to keep it as right now in H2. We may want to change this a little bit later. I'll hit enter. And then again, because I am lazy, I'm just going to copy all their text here because there's nothing proprietary about this. So I'm going to just Control-C, copy their text. And again, you could type this all by hand. And because this is just going to be a paragraph, I can simply paste this text in here. I probably don't need 2 phone numbers. We'll delete one of these phone numbers. And let's see what, oops, I missed a 5. And let's see what this looks like now. So I'm going to update this again. And let's view the page. Okay, my text is good, but remember I made this this whole page widescreen. So now this looks a little messed up because this is all the way over on the side. Well, what I want is I do want the page to be 100% full width. But in this case, this row, I don't want the row to be touching end to end. I want some space in here. So in fact, I probably want this row, as I look at this, I probably want the row itself to maybe be, I don't know, like 70% of the width of the screen or so. So that's the first thing I'm going to change. So I'm going to go back in here. And again, I know this isn't really contact page stuff, but just to kind of show people, hopefully this is making sense to you of like when you do things, you need to adjust things kind of on the fly. So let's change the row layout. Oops, let me go back to the block settings. So for this row in Cadence, this block has, the nice thing about this is that there's a lot of settings you can control. And the one that controls the size is called structure. So here, I want to say that I want to have a maximum width, meaning I don't want this row to get any bigger than a particular size. And what's cool in Cadence is you can define that width by pixels or percentages. We didn't talk a lot about responsive design, but in general, where you can, you want to use units that adjust, regardless of what kind of device you're viewing something on. So in this case, we're only on the desktop view, but I'm going to change it from pixels to say percentage. And I want this thing to be, I guess 70%. I'll say 70%. So what did that do? Let's look at this in a preview. Does that look better? Yes, that looks a lot better. So now my content is still fine, but the whole row itself now is going to maximum be 70% of whatever device I'm looking at it on. So I'll finish this up real quick because I do want to get to the form part of it. So meanwhile, the only other two things, I'll do one thing, and I'll save one for other people because I'll do it afterwards, is if you think about this in terms of a contact page, as much as possible, you want people to get everything they need from this page and not have to jump out someplace else. So for example, the email, wouldn't it be nice if I could just click on this email and it will launch in my email client instead of having to copy this email and paste it somewhere? So there's some mixed schools of thought of this, because back to the spam thing, sometimes it makes it easier to spam you, but again, I'm thinking more of visitors' convenience as opposed to my inconvenience of spam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this into a hyperlink that can be clicked on so people can email me. So let's highlight this text, and in Gutenberg itself, if I click and say I want to make this a link, it's smart enough to know I want it to be a mail link because it knows that that's an email format. So it says mail to example.com. So that's what I want it to be. So I can just click on this now and save it, update this. Now, if we look at the page again, excuse me, now this is a hyperlink where if somebody clicked on this, it would send it to me. It would send me an email. Let's do one last thing. I'm not going to fill out the street address or city and state. Again, you can imagine you can put in a real address in there. The last thing I'll do is I'll put a couple social icons in here. We'll do kind of like what they did, which I think is nice. Let's go edit the page. And if you notice, this is the thing I keep falling back to from WordPress. Was it 5.8 they introduced this, the list view? This helps me keep my sanity of where I am in my page. I still need the structure of, if I want to add something in here, rather than just clicking on it, I want to know it's precisely getting placed where I want it to go. So at the end of my paragraph here, I am going to add a new thing, and I'm going to add social icons. So social icons come with WordPress. Again, they've been there since, it's a Gutenberg block, I should say. So it's not something from Cadence. But the thing that also got introduced recently with, again, I think 5.8 was one of these block patterns that like Peter was showing. So WordPress included 5.8 social icon block pattern. Mm-hmm. And what's in there is these are styled, so I don't have to go through and change all the styling of these. So this is what I'm going to drop in here. So the first thing is, again, I probably don't want, I'll do one of these and you can figure out the rest of them. So I don't want this one to be email because I already have an email one. Oops, let me go back again, sorry. So I can get rid of the email block because that doesn't make sense. Remove that one. This is for a website. I don't want that. In fact, even the WordPress one doesn't make a lot of sense. But let me add a block in here first. Let me add a block for most likely something like Facebook. So I've added a Facebook block in here, but now I need to actually give it some information. So I'm not going to put a real Facebook address in here. I'm just going to put a placeholder, which is just a pound sign. And I'll hit enter and apply it. And then let me get rid of this WordPress block because that doesn't make any sense. I'll do one more. So let's say we had Facebook and we have Instagram, maybe. I can spell it Insta. Oops, sorry, wrong place. Here, I want to add a block. Instagram. And same thing, you actually have to put in a value in here of some kind, otherwise it won't display it. So let me finish this off, click update. Now let's view our page. Voila. So now we have the icons or styling, and we can change the styling afterwards, but we're close enough. We're close enough, and you can change padding and do lots of things here. We're close enough to this that all we need now is a form. So let me.
Yeah. So Ray, with the social,
yep.
Real quick. Now you used What block now you used?
It was a pattern. So yeah, when you search for social icons in
Yeah.
WordPress, it'll show you an individual social icon, which you would have to put it in there and style it all.
Yeah.
With 5.8, they included a pattern for social icons, plural,
Yeah.
and they're styled in that particular way. So that's the one you drop in.
So why that's interesting to me and to anyone is because, again, in the WordPress, there are many ways to do the same thing. And what's kind of interesting about where we're going to see from patterns, right? So patterns are going to be a super powerful way of bringing, all these pre-designed things in, but they're also blocks. And in fact, I'm sure Cadence probably has a social icon block. Maybe I'm used to it in the premium, and it could be a premium feature.
It's a premium, yeah. I don't think
Yeah.
there's a free one.
Yeah, and that's a great example too of the different ways. And if you go to the premium Cadence blocks, this is an option that you have. But that, I tell you, that block pattern is great.
It's nice, yeah.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to grab the screen and are there any questions up to this point?
Yeah, does that make sense for folks? Open a new tab. Yeah, somebody said it took me forever to open a new tab for social icons. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, this is probably one of the bigger challenges with all the different blocks is you're going, okay, do I go, is the control that I want up here to the side here inside the thing? And it comes with both practice and in a lot of cases, you're just setting these things up and you have to kind of go through it that time that you need to go through it and then kind of not think about it again. But
can I go back to Sue's question on the chat? So
yeah.
Sue's question, I think about the to embed a map, does it require account? No, not to embed a map.
Okay, I didn't read that. Yeah.
Use a Google Maps API. Yes, that's the thing I talked about. You actually have to set up an account and put a credit card on file to use the Maps API. So why would you want to use the Maps API? The Maps API integrates with plugins that like mapping plugins or things like using, we may do this eventually, the events calendar plugin.
Yep.
It'll require you to put in a Maps, an API in there. So that's where there's times where unfortunately you may have to set up an account. But for something simple like what I just did, no, you can just copy the HTML in there, the iframe, and then you don't need to set up an account at all.
To embed. And there are, I made a note, there are some blocks that you can call up the map if you have a certain amount of information, but you're right, like the events calendar, perfect example, because part of what you're doing when you put in the events calendar is you can enter an address and then it's bringing up a map on the editor. Is this the correct place? And also you're doing a lot of transactions back and forth. So that's all using the API. That's that speedy connection to the mapping engine.
Yeah.
All righty.
I think I got out of the page, Peter, so you should
Okay.
have to go in there and edit. I'm pretty sure I'm out of it. Let me make sure. Yeah.
Okay, and just FYI, I did fix the blocks. I won't go into the exact details, but it literally was it was whoever called it on the nose. A reusable block inside of a block because of the way I had grouped it. I had a version of it off to the side where I just copied in the same thing. One quick thing on this plugin that I mentioned that's really cool, where you can do a lot. You can also see when you have reusable blocks where they're being posted, which is if you're an admin of a site and all of a sudden you go, where am I using this stuff? That's yet another kind of pretty powerful aspect of this particular plugin for managing reusable blocks. We'll come back to that in a future meetup. All right, so the pages. Let's see what you do there, Ray. You created a contact page. So I'll take a view of it. And now we've got this big blank area that we want to put a contact form in. So I'm going to edit the page and I'm going to show how to do this, hopefully quickly, 2 ways. And one of the ways we had built right into what this set of tools that we already have. When we loaded the Cadence blocks, so it's the plugins, Cadence blocks. This is the free version. In the Cadence blocks, we have, I'm going to Appearance Cadence, where you can kind of see the admin section for Cadence itself. And if you may know this, but with different blocks, you can turn different blocks on and off and things like that. And this is ways of customizing. But just to show you, we've got Cadence loaded. So now when I go back to that page, the contact page, I'm going to edit it. And Ray's given me a nice section with this row and these 2 columns to add a block. So with Cadence loaded, with the Cadence plugin loaded, I can add a block, and I could add if I just type in form, I can see it under form, or with the inserter. So the plus up here in the top left corner, Cadence Blocks, I kind of take the top level, and there is a form, which of course now I don't see because it's probably just because I'm not seeing it. You can always use the search and don't spell it from. So there's the form. I'll just drop it into this spot here. And look, without even really doing anything, you get a default form that pretty much covers what we want to do. Now, what's really both nice and yet a little difficult with a block plugin form, in this case Cadence, is when I click on this form, I have my settings in my right hand block area, and the form block, you have a whole lot of information in this one little column for editing. But you can see that the default is already putting in a name, an email, and a message. And then if I look at and there's a glitch in there that I found, by the way, which is normally when you see the up and down arrow, this is something in block properties that you can use to open and close certain sections. It's kind of like the accordion style way of getting at detail. This block, for whatever reason, you can't close them all. It's like one needs to be required, or the name, in this case, the top one, the name field. But this section here that I have highlighted is associated with the details here. So if I wanted to say and change it, like, what's your name? No, I wouldn't do that. These properties here, you can see this is affecting what's going to be in my form, but we'll just say name. And if you wanted a placeholder, something like that, you could put that in. You can start really doing that a lot with just this built-in block. Now, one thing that we might want to do, and again, this is where it gets a little confusing, because you start looking and saying, okay, there's my email field, there's my text area field. Now, a text area field allows you to enter paragraphs of information. Many of these fields are what you would call the single line text field. So when you add a field, and we're going to add a field, and let me find, I've got this again, it's a little overwhelming, this interface, if you ask me, but if I can add a field, and maybe this field, the default is now, I'm going to open up the details for that. I have a field label that I'm going to call this phone. And what I can also do is, if I look over here, I've added this field, and now I'm going to move it up to, say, just underneath the email. And that's these up and down arrows for each. It's sort of a box inside of a box. And the phone, I'm going to make it, I have these different choices of the types of fields that I want. But in this case, I'm just going to call it a text field, because the other choices that I have, email, it will be, there's some validation, make sure it's an email, a text area. Ray, I think you're going to play with some of these. I'm going to try to give you some time to put in your volunteer where you have different, oh, that's in the Fluent Forms one, but you actually have, yes, but you actually have choices in here that I was surprised to see, where you can add options. We won't get into all that right now, because we're just dealing the simple form. And I'm going to simply update this and view the page. And now I have a form in that field. It's really that simple. Now, the details of this form, though, if I come back to it using the Cadence, now, the Cadence plugin, and if I go to the form settings, after the fields, and again, there's a lot of it. What's hard about this plugin versus what we're going to show you is there's so much information packed into this one little column. So the email settings, that's a field setting. All these are field settings. If I get into the below where I'm adding fields, I can say, okay, actions after submit. What happens when somebody hits the submit button? And you can actually have it do multiple things. I can say, well, email me and then redirect the page, and then I will get options on what happens there. But let's just say it emails me. My email settings in this area, so email to me from website, reply to email field, which is the field that is being sent over here from the form. Send us, these are all built into this plugin. Basic spam check, enable the basic honeypot. That gets into something that we weren't going to cover too much, but how to prevent the bots, and this has a basic sort of hidden field that if a computer goes and fills out, it's not going to process the form. For the most part, the bots are very smart and kind of run over that. We're not going to get into the reCAPTCHA at this point. It's going to take too long for what we want to do. I think we're going to do that when we get into kind of the security updates of our sections. Field styles, now you can get into all the styling, colors and lines. Let's just go with the default right now and update that. So now just to show again on the front page, and if I enter, I'll just use my default information. And I'll submit that. And now, because of the settings that I have on this, which is I haven't actually redirected to another page, like a thank you for letting us know page. There is a built-in what's the message response, like submission success, thanks for getting in touch. We could change that. And the way to change that, go back here to edit the page. Click on the form. And then like the message settings, submission success, thanks for getting in touch. We could change it to, we'll be in touch as soon as we can. As soon as we can. And so on. So going through all of these different settings affects what happens on the front end. But that's the quickest way to load a contact form that actually does something, that takes the information, and then because I set it to email me, emails me the information. What it doesn't do, at least in the free version of Cadence, is, for example, write it to a database, keep track of it on this side. So we're going to show you a tool that gives you a lot more power and much easier to use editor at this point. But that was a lot in a short column. Any questions on that before we move to a different tool?
Yeah, Peter, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
I have built some forms, and if I don't require people to fill in the information, then they don't automatically do it.
Right.
So the last form that I built was for the conference we have coming up in a couple of weeks. And I wanted to track what state people were coming from and whether or not they were members of the chapter of that state.
Okay.
So I put in state of resident and chapter. And people fill that state of residence in as USA.
As USA?
Yeah, which
Okay.
doesn't help me in the least bit. So what should
Yeah.
I add?
So that's when you get into premium tools, right? Right? Wouldn't you say, where
That's where you want, so that field was probably a text field, where what you
Yeah.
wanted was, that's where a good example, you want to limit those choices, right? So you want
Exactly.
a state field in there that has the list of state codes.
Yeah.
So a drop-down box with, that they
Yeah.
would click it off? Oh, okay, all right.
Well, that's
I'm
one
gonna
way
do
to,
that.
yeah. What form are you using, a form plugin?
Gravity.
Okay. So that is kind of its own discussion because Gravity Forms is a premium only tool. They don't have a free version, and there's all kinds of validation tools built into that. So why don't we follow up, maybe even directly to you
Okay,
on Gravity, and we could talk about. But validation is something like, say, for example, under the phone here. Let me see if I can find.
Yeah, Peter, that brings up a question to me that's really confusing is what plugins to use. They're free and they're valid, and then they remove features that they believe the free doesn't have anymore. Then you got to pay. Gravity Forms became quite a pain to me. They're kind of holding me hostage at the moment. I did pay at one point, but then they restructured everything, and now they want me to pay again on a yearly basis. I don't have a budget. I work on a website, happens to be for a small community here. I don't have a budget, and every time that they do this to me, I have to go and beg again for some more money to do something. So
Right.
the plug-in situation is becoming embarrassing to me. I don't know if anybody feels the same way, but it just, you use a free one, and it becomes what you need is not free anymore. So you have to upgrade, and then you upgrade, and then all of a sudden they go from a one-time license to a yearly subscription. And it's getting so bizarre. I don't know if I can deal with it much more, and I don't know what else to do either. But it feels like everybody's holding you for ransom nowadays. Maybe a topic for, I don't want to go there, but that's one of my biggest issues right now.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And in fact, when we show this plugin that we're going to offer, that we're going to discuss, it may just be that some of what you're looking for is there. So because the different premium tools have, there are, what one is offering for free and one is offering for paid could be different depending on which plugin we're looking at. Gravity Forms has historically been the most powerful tool. They've got a lot of competition that they honestly didn't have a few years ago. They are on a fully paid model. It's a great tool. There's a whole lot of reasons to use it, but I understand, there's depending on, I think it's $99 a year, and you have to keep going back to the well to get that. Fluent Forms had a life, and we're going to talk about it, had a lifetime.
Right, and so you know, as an example, I only use it for a login, like our site has a free page, but as a member or community where we have minutes and stuff like that. So I only use Gravity for one thing, which is to capture login information. So it's kind of crazy, like in the login page itself. So, but that's it. I don't want to go.
Okay, no, that's good. But and I think a login form is its own topic. So maybe we'll take a note of that and come back to it. But Ray, what do you think? Go bring up Fluent Forms real quick.
Yeah.
Okay, so Fluent Forms. You can just Google Fluent Forms. Yes, it's a premium, but I'll show you. And it is a plugin. The premium tool has a lot going for it, but what we're going to do is we're going to go to plugins, install plugins, add new, and we're going to add Fluent Forms, the free version. So it's free and then premium. They go under the contact form plugin, fastest contact. So we're going to install that. There's 100,000 active installs, 5 stars. It's well supported. I like it for a free tool. I like it a lot. Now, what's different between a block that is a form versus something like Fluent Forms is you create the form in the tool and then you place it in the place you want to place it. So in this case, I'm going to now we have this new menu choice called Fluent Forms. And if I look at and go under Fluent Forms, all forms, interestingly enough, there's some demos that it starts with, but let's just say we can even look at what is that form that is the demo. And you can kind of use it right out of the gate, right? So we can use this form And I'll show you. So you get the kind of a subscription, which is a simple like email address and name. And then we have a your form editor, but this is all only to create a form that then gets placed. So if we were to follow what we just did, we might want to have, and this is something that's kind of interesting. So the phone field is a premium feature by itself, but I say, well, I want a phone. Well, the phone is really just a text field, simple text, they call it. So I can drag and drop this to where I want it. And it's a much easier drag and drop mode. I think we're going to see this being part of the block editor going forward. And now I've got this new field that I've dropped in that I can, if I click on it, I can now say, well, what's the label? Phone. I don't really need to do anything here.
Peter, could I even suggest a better field?
Yeah,
Go-
the masked one.
Yeah, go back to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I was going to say, but this, right, so the phone as just a text would be this free form entry. But what Ray is suggesting, and I'm just going to delete this. I don't need it. I'm going to go to the masked field, and that's
It's in the top. It's below named fields.
thank you. So what's different about just a straight text field? So I'm going to place this here. I'm going to call this phone. But this gives me a choice to do what's called an input mask. And the input mask is what now gives you ways of kind of pre-formatting and putting in that text. So we're going to go with our classic phone number mask. Right. So now I can save this form, and I'm going to edit the form to, instead of just contact form demo, I'm just going to say contact form. Right. This is the one weird thing, I don't know if you find, where you have to go way up here to find the field name. It gets a little confusing because it's just sort of this hidden thing. You know, you could decide, do you really need a subject for this? I'm going to delete that field. I don't think we need a subject for it. That was just a simple text field. But one of the things that you get really involved with something like this kind of input is you can start putting in containers with columns and extra fields and put things next to each other. And we're not going to do that right now for the simple form, but this all built into the free version gets you a lot of control over what happens and the way the form looks and works. Now, one of the other things to look under is under settings and integration. So the editor is what you see, the fields you have. Let me make sure to save this. Thank you for the warning. Settings and integrations now get into things like, okay, what messages do you want? Do you want a message to go to the person? So this does a lot more in terms of confirmation. Hey, thanks for your message. We'll get in touch with you shortly. Might be a default one that you have. The email notifications, you can end up setting up different notifications to different people. And you could set up all kinds of triggers for things like that. So you have a lot of options here. One of the other things that will be nice and we'll show is I clicked over here under Fluent Forms entries. Everything gets saved in the database. So this is now, again, a standalone form tool. Let me go back to the page that we created, the contact form. If I view it, remember, we've got this form here. This is a cadence block. If I edit the page, just so I have it, I'm going to take, I am going to take this field here, and I am going to, do I even need to save it?
Nah.
Nah.
Do it.
All right, let's get rid of the. So now I got rid of that form, and now what we're going to do is we're going to add a new field, a new block. And now if I go under form, Fluent,
Yeah.
okay, you have to put in Fluent Forms. Now, because I've added this plugin, I have a Fluent Forms block. So I'm going to install that. I'm going to insert that block. And the block is saying, well, great. You want to put a form here. What form do you want? When you click on your select form, these were the two that were already there. So subscription form, and I just edited the contact form. So I'm going to put the contact form there, update it. And now when I view the page, fingers crossed. Well, page. View the page. So now I have the Fluent Forms form, and you can see, you can tell the difference because you had the first name and last names, two separate fields. This was the field I put in with the mask. So see how the number now is formatted that way. And so if we then put in information here real quick, John Doe at Help with WP, 860-555-1212.
Does
Here
that,
is
does
my
that added
message.
for, you had pound signs, is that added for numerics only? On the
I
phone?
missed the question.
Your mask said pound, pound, pound.
Yep.
Does that mean it's only numerics and you can't enter alpha numbers in there on the phone number?
Correct. And there's actually, I believe you can put in custom masks. So you can, if you needed something different, there's typically with masks, you have like pound is number, an alphanumeric, the date would have date codes and all. We can go back and visit that at some time, but
Just real
if I
quick,
submit this,
yeah, just so the internet, so the pro version does have an actual phone field, and you'd wonder, well,
Yes.
why do you need that? The phone field, the international one, comes with a country code and a bunch of
Right.
other stuff in there. It's a fancier phone field.
yeah.
Right.
So now I entered that in the settings for this, and there's an area if we go into all the details of the setting, but it says, okay, in this case, I could again redirect to another page, show the message. In this case, it's saying show the message and don't show the form anymore. If you notice, the block before still showed the form and had the message below. And that's actually an option, but it's the default option, which works quite well. Thank you for your message. We'll get in touch with you shortly. Just real quick on the back end, if I go back to the forms, I have a page here that under Fluent Forms. And if I look at entries, I'm actually getting a flag that says I have one entry. When I look at that section, it's saying, okay, you've got under your contact form, you have an entry, and there's my information, John Doe, that I entered. So this now is getting saved to the database, and there's actually other ways to pull this out. You can extract it. There's even a PDF document, PDF plugin that you could extract this as a PDF. And we don't have time for that right now, but this is now adding a lot more power, approaching even a Gravity Forms on the free version. The paid version is actually quite in line with Gravity Forms.
Yeah, I like it. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So Ray, is that too quick?
No, that's good, because that's going to help build on
Okay.
what I'll do there.
Peter, could
Yeah.
you just tell us what the placeholder meant?
Yes. So I shouldn't click. I don't want to click all new forms. Actually, let me show you this very, very fast. Under new form, what's again nice is that you do get some templates available, and then the premium version. I'm not selling the premium version. You get even more things where it's just like one click and it builds things out. If I look at the forms and I look at the edit and say last name, in this it's already built in. Let's see. Okay, placeholder is the text that shows up within the box. That's basically it's suggesting what could go in, please enter your last name here, or that type of thing. So
And sometimes, just from a styling standpoint too, sometimes you don't need both. So if, let's say he wants a skinnier form, you could turn off the label. So in this one, Peter, maybe just turn off the hide label for this field. To upper third, yeah. So there, so it's just, it makes the form thinner. Sometimes that's another styling thing. Put placeholders in, don't put the label names on there.
However, in a future meetup, we will talk about accessibility.
Yes, okay.
And forms are
So you jumped in.
a big issue when it comes to accessibility.
Take that back. Don't listen to me.
All right, take that back.
Peter, I just put that into the chat.
Yeah.
Don't get rid of labels.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll tell you, if you're a Gravity Forms person, they are great at accessibility now, and Fluent Forms is really, really good at accessibility. Now they've really paid attention, Gravity Forms especially. Okay, Ray, I'm going to hand this over to you.
Oh, I'll edit out that part later about the accessibility. No,
Which part?
my part where I'm like, I get rid of the label. But it's cool.
Okay, no, that's okay. Hey, I made a whole mistake on something. You can too.
All right, so I'm not going to, so what I'm going to show next, and just for the sake of time, I won't go super deep into this, but I'll kind of show, I'm going to expand upon what Peter was just showing for forms. So, and again, what we're showing, I know we're talking Fluent Forms here, but a lot of these concepts are available in other form plugins. So don't feel like you need to throw your form plugin away and start from scratch. But I just want to, if you haven't used some of these features, it's nice for you to know and see kind of the context of how you might use them. So now we should have let me get out of this thing. We should have a contact form that Peter was creating. But again, back to our animal shelter, one thing we may want is for people to fill in a form if they want to volunteer at the shelter. So just to kind of show you an example what this might look like, if I go to the Connecticut Humane Society, they have this volunteer application. I'm not going to build this whole thing, but and this is back to my example of this is, my goodness, this is one of the forms that you don't want to normally build. Of like, I would give up after like the first page of this, but again,
right.
So we're going to do something where I'm going to start something like this and just show you some concepts, advanced, a little more advanced concepts. So I'm going to go again. Fluent Forms now should be in here. Right? Let me just refresh. Okay, there we go. I'm going to create a form. This is going to be our volunteer form. So I'm going to make it blank. As Peter said, the first thing in Fluent Forms is I always just like to change the name first. So let's say this is going to be our volunteer sign up form. Let's rename it there. So volunteer sign up, first thing we're going to want, I'll put a couple of fields, just thinking that Connecticut Humane Society thing. We're going to want somebody's name. So I can just drop oops, I click it here. We'll add the name fields. I'm going to make these required. So under Fluent Forms, let's say, yes, let's make that required field. Last name, I don't care about middle name. Let's make that required field. Okay. And then underneath this, I'm going to, let's see what else. Let's put a couple simple things. I'll put email address in here. Obviously, that's also required. But here's where I'll show something a little bit different. So let's say first name, last name. But now let's put in something where we want conditional logic to trigger. So in this example, I don't know if they have it in Connecticut Humane Society, but another animal shelter I work with on their website, they have some restrictions for volunteers. So age restrictions, if you're under 18, you can't do certain things, or you can't even volunteer if you're under age 18. So let's create something like that. So what would we do? Well, we first need a field in here. And again, there's a lot of ways you can do this, but let's make it something simple. We're going to do let's say a radial field to begin with. And again, we're relying on people's honesty here, but we're going to say, are you over the age of 18? Right, and we're going to have a simple yes, no. Is it required? Yes, it's required. And I'm just going to save this form just to make sure. I'm paranoid. I like to save things, make sure things don't disappear. So are you over the age of 18? Yes or no? So here's where I'm going to show you just really simple conditional logic. But let's take we're going to take some text.
Birth certificate.
Yeah, upload your birth. You can upload files here, but that's a paid version.
That's paid, yeah.
So let's say in here we're going to say something like, sorry, but volunteers must be over the age of 18, something like that. So one thing Fluent Forms has, and again, other form builders have this as well, is they have the ability to do conditional logic. What's cool about Fluent Forms is it's in the free version. So we want to say, yes,
yeah,
this label we're going to display is going to be conditional. So I'm going to say yes, and here's where we define the conditional. And this is really powerful stuff if you think about what you can do with it. But ours is going to be pretty simple. So our condition is going to say if this field above it, are you over age 18? And so we're saying you must be is not equal to yes. So they're saying they're not over the age of 18. So let me save this form and I'll show you in a preview how this will work. So we're going to just preview this. Oops, no, sorry. Let me go back. Oh, you know, I think preview sometimes gets a little messed up. Let me go back again. Save my form. I want to get out. Go back into my form. Edit it. Get real. This is real life we're seeing here. Edit this. And let me just make sure I had it set up correctly. Okay, so you're saying it's conditional, so only displays if the condition.
Yeah, in this case, you probably want to say,
Yeah.
you know, it is equal, if it is equal to no. Well,
No, I think it was the all. I had it as any.
oh,
Oh no, it's still saying it. Okay.
right, because conditionally, it's not yes because they haven't checked the yes.
So are you over? Okay, are you over is equal? Are you over? Okay, is equal to yes. You're right. Backwards thinking. Sorry. Let's say that one more time. Okay, now.
If it's equal to no.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. That's with negative thinking. So I'll show this real quick. So I say array.
Could be a little bit backwards, but you'll figure it out.
So are you over the age of 18? No. Oh.
Yeah, you have to change.
You're right. The volunteer. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get it. So are you over the age of 18? So now if I go back to this and say,
Yeah. Well, while Ray's fixing that, this is very, very powerful. This is, you know, those big long forms that you just showed for the Humane Society, for example, could be much of the content could be hidden. And then based on one answer, you could open up a section that then has new questions. Conditional displays in forms is super powerful.
Yeah, and the free version gives some basics. I'm glad you brought that up here. So we're not going to be able to go into that, but the paid version of this includes things called like multi-step forms and that ability, what they call now conversational forms.
Conversational.
So, yeah, it's a way to take something that's many large steps, break it apart, and something like this. You're right. If I know this right away, if I know the person's not over the age of 18, don't show those other 50 questions. Just stop them right here. So ideally, this would not only just put the message up, you would even display the button, and you can do that with the paid version.
Right.
So.
Yep.
All right. Thanks. I had my logic was backwards. So. All right, so that's one thing I wanted to show just real quick was was conditional. Another one, just in terms of these other input fields, the complexity of these. Let me show the what's it? It's multiple choice. Would be a good one here. Just
I like multiple choice.
So a multi-select here. Let's say what days are you available? Let's say option one. I'll just make it. I'll say Monday, Tuesday. You get the idea. I'll put one more day in here. I'll put in weekends, something like that. And then save the form again. So what's neat about this one, multi-choice, is when we preview this. So what days are you available? This isn't just a drop down. You can actually have multiple selections in here too. So again, something more complex, you can think of the different choices you can do in here. And all this data, I'm not going to show it just for the sake of time, but all of these data fields, when you submit the form, you not only see this on the back end, like Peter was showing what the entries look like, but back to what I was talking about, automation and things, you can really do a lot of things with those values. So just to show you here, all these values, you can have trigger other processes. So let's say Mondays, you want that value to be saved in a database or a spreadsheet someplace. But instead of saying Monday, you want it to say, you want a value saved in your database of 1, or Tuesdays or 2s, or Tuesday, or 3s. Where this makes more sense is when you start working with products. So if you're going to start connecting this to PayPal, there are times, and I built this for some clients, where you don't need WooCommerce. WooCommerce may be overkill. All I want is a simple form with, they want to order one thing with 3 sizes, and one is $5, and one is 10, one's 15. This is how you would do it. You would make this, like, say, this is my small, medium, and large, etc. Sometimes all you need is a form. You don't need a full-blown e-commerce piece. And again, just for the sake of time, let me show one last thing in here. So the drop downs, The notifications. So this could be a little bit goofy because I'm not really adding it to anything. So Peter showed this a little bit in terms of settings and integrations. Just quickly, why would you want to navigate to somebody to something besides the same page? Well, sometimes you want to have a thank you page, for example. So you would create a new page saying thank you for volunteering. What's the point of that? Back to an SEO perspective or Google Analytics perspective, you can now start tracking the number of people who went to the thank you page. Or let's say you have you're too young to volunteer, and that's where you send them to. Think about keeping somebody off of the current page they're on allows you to do some tracking things. Or again, you can send them to a different page on your site, a custom URL, I should say. So all this stuff is built into the back end of the site. Let me see if I've had to do this for other folks too. Let's say you have a sign up for volunteers. This probably doesn't make sense, but what if you have something where people are signing up for an event? You can limit the number of entries. So it only allows up to 10 entries or something. Again, it's not, make sure somebody doesn't go in there and enter duplicate ones, but it'll prevent things. And then finally, let me just show the marketing integrations. I think you touched upon this already, Peter, but there's a lot of stuff. The paid version, again, we're gonna keep plugging the paid version, but any form plugin, why would you spend the money? It's because of this. I mean, these are one of the big reasons to upgrade or any kind of form plugin. You can plug it into your data, can get connected to PayPal. You can do things like Zapier, and we probably need a whole session on Zapier. But basically, once the data gets over to this intermediary like Zapier, you can do anything with it. It can then connect you to hundreds of other applications in the back end. So again, lots of powerful stuff. Again, from the volunteer page standpoint, this is probably where you maybe would want to invest in a premium plugin, because maybe I would want people to upload a document, for example. Let's say I want them to upload the proof of age or proof of something or other, or et cetera. That's where the premium thing comes in. And just one last thing is, let's just look real quick at our mail settings here. So let me go back to the form, because I don't think we had this. I don't know if you showed this or not, Peter, but back in the settings, email notifications.
Right.
We have it disabled right now, but let me add a real simple one in here. So this is volunteer sign up. I'm naming it something. So who do you want to send this to? Let's say I want to send it to me. And I'll say volunteer. So by default, it's sending it. It's just pre-formatting this. But what's cool about this plugin is you can choose what data you want sent. So you can actually say from the field, it knows, like, maybe I just want the name, or maybe I want things formatted a certain way. I want the fields broken out, or just all data. I mean, in general, I tend to send all the data. And then in advance, I think you might have showed this as well, Peter, is some of these fields from your form you can use then in this advanced section. So reply to, let's say I want, if I'm replying to this email, I want to make sure I'm replying to the email that they provided me in the form. So I can just save this notification and make sure you enable it. So quick whirlwind tour of Fluent Forms.
Yeah.
Again, I think other form plugins work similarly. So look for these features. If you saw something today, say this is great, I want to move to Fluent Forms. Take a look what you have already. Maybe there's something already in there that does something similar.
Yeah, and through meetup.com or Facebook, you can ask us. I'd be happy to take a look too. But knowing what it's capable, and kind of having an idea of the different types of fields. We're used to the simple fields, name, address, phone number, and we'll get back to you. But when you really have something that you're trying to work out, and you start looking at things like conditional logic and types of fields and which ones are required and what you're triggering. In a future meetup, we'll follow up on this with how to connect everything, because Ray, I think we should do like navigation and footers and things like that, and connecting these things to the buttons. But we'll also get into the reCAPTCHA stuff. We'll get into the when you were sending a mail form, when you're sending a form by mail and doing a trigger, the ways to, how are you gonna improve deliverability?
Yeah.
Using SMTP servers. When can you and can't you use that reply address the way you might want to, depending on what email servers you're using. So those are all, this is getting that page to work, and then we're getting to optimizing and really making things, work correctly.
And this is also another good time to bring up too. So, so what's next? We obviously, we missed a couple of things tonight just because it's a big topic, even for something as simple as contact forms. You're right. So when our next time, we're probably going to finish this off, meaning we're on the side, I'll build out a real volunteer form. I think our contact form is pretty good. And then we'll show you how to connect that back to the homepage. So on our homepage, in the header, we have the contact button, but it's not going anywhere. So we'll fix a couple of those things, maybe at our next meetup. At some point, we may or may not, I'll have to think about this one a little bit, but donations are kind of a unique case of, you can create a donations page, a donations contact form using Fluent Forms. It's nothing different. But donations itself are kind of a unique situation where there are some plugins out there. One in particular, WP Give, that already has a lot of built-in functionality for donations, and it looks really slick, and it's free too. So, that's the thing. Sometimes you don't want to have multiple tools or plugins on a site where it doesn't make sense, but sometimes it does, because one plugin does a little bit more than just a contact form plugin. So we may build that out in the future or add that to the site. So our site continues to march on. We're getting there. We have a lot more stuff, and as Peter said, it's never ending. There's always things to add to, but hopefully, people are finding this interesting. And again, as you're working on stuff, even though it may not be related to an animal shelter, you're like, hey, have you guys thought of this? Throw out the comment to us, or throw out the suggestions to us, as I said, in the Facebook group or on Meetup, because I think it's fun to learn with something that you see growing, and it gives, I think, context too, as opposed to just some abstract example that we use.
Yeah, and it's fun to fail in front of you and have to fix it while we're done. Any last questions? We're kind of at the end, but. Well, we've got the Facebook group, we've got the Meetup group.
We'll send out links, as we always do. If you're here for the first time, we'll send out links to the recording. They should be up probably sometime tomorrow on our YouTube channel. I'll send out an email to everyone through Meetup. Thanks again, everyone, for joining, sticking with us.
Hey, could I ask you a suggestion? Sometimes it's kind of bad, and on the Facebook page, could you guys put in on the day or whenever link to this? I kind of came in late and I didn't send it to my calendar, so I had to scrounge around trying to find the link to get in.
Sure.
It would be nice if it was. I went to the Facebook page, but it wasn't there. I was kind of hoping I could just click from there, but it wasn't there.
The link to the Zoom meeting.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
Usually,
I forget sometimes to go to meetup.com and call.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it took me a little bit of time to get here, so I apologize for being late, but great job. Thank you.
Yeah, good feedback. Yeah, because usually I think we put out the Meetup announcement there, but not the actual link to.
Right.
We can do that.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good night. We'll see you all again next month.
Thanks.
Take care.
Okay. Bye.